he was so wrong in so many ways. And maybe if you hadn't trusted Mohammed Al Fayed, you would still be with us today. But Neil Hamilton, so good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Good job.
I know a lot of you are dealing with or have dealt with these symptoms, especially amongst the women in the Outspoken family. Now, obviously, I haven't experienced menopause firsthand, obviously.
That doesn't make sense.
But I've heard from so many of you about the challenges that come with it. So I'm coming to you with good news, I hope, because by now most of you have heard me talk about Verso. I've been taking their products for months and it's been absolutely transformative for me. But today I want to focus on all of you amazing women out there, especially those dealing with menopause or perimenopause.
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
I've heard about how tough this phase of life can be. But Salbean by Verso is designed to target those symptoms head on by addressing the root cause. It's formulated with ingredients that are proven to increase NAD+ levels in the body. Now that is huge because NAD+ is what keeps your cells healthy and energized, but it drops off as we age.
Yes, exactly.
Especially during menopause. Here's the thing, boosting NAD+ can make a big difference in how you feel. Women who've taken Salbean are reporting some pretty amazing changes. Hot flashes disappearing, more energy, joint pain release, weight loss, and mental clarity. I've even heard from some listeners who've told me that their periods have come back or have become regulated and they feel like they've turned back the clock on aging. The ingredients in Salbean have shown to balance hormones without going the traditional hormone therapy route. It helps with inflammation and metabolism, which is especially helpful for managing weight and keeping you feeling your best. Plus, these research-backed ingredients have been shown to improve bone health, which is crucial for post-menopausal women at risk of osteoporosis. What I love about Salbean, and think you will too, is that it doesn't just mask the symptoms of menopause, it tackles the root causes of aging, helping you feel stronger, healthier, and more energized from the inside out. So if you haven't tried it yet and you're ready to take control of your health and feel more like yourself, click the link in the description on YouTube and Rumble, or head over to buy.ver.so and use the coupon code Outspoken to save 15% on your first order today. So if you're tired of the sleepless nights, the hot flashes, or just feeling off, give Salbean a try. It's already helped so many of you, and I'm confident it can help even more of you feel better too. So to repeat, that's buy.ver.so/outspoken and use the coupon code Outspoken for a 15% discount.
We don't do that here.
But ladies, I want to talk to you about the other big story which has a royal connection this week. Mohammed Al Fayed, these explosive revelations from the BBC with multiple rape claims. For folk who don't know, Mohammed Al Fayed was, of course, the father of Dodi Al Fayed, who died in the Paris tunnel with Princess Diana, the owner of Harrods for many years.
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
But they're pulling in a woman, Lady C, called Anne Coxon into this and seemingly trying to turn her almost into the Ghislaine Maxwell of the piece. And I believe you have a personal connection with her and some real insight into what the BBC are trying to do here.
Are you sure about that?
I do. She's my private GP, and she is an extremely eminent member of the medical profession.
Wow.
I won't even dragging half the names in the medical profession as well as her patients. I mean, it is absolutely outrageous in my view.
Oh, Lord. Again.
That the BBC can be, and they've mounted this as a deflection campaign because they knew Hugh Edwards had to plead guilty. They have had a series of scandals, all of which they have managed to dampen down. There was the Jimmy Savile matter.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Then there was the Martin Bashir matter, where Martin Bashir practically drove the already troubled Diana to insanity. And I mean, literal insanity, because she ended up being paranoid in the medical sense of the word, gratis his lies.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Not only did they know about this, but they covered it up for 25 years. They destroyed the career of the person who originally complained about it, I'm saying artist because I don't know the technological terms.
Yeah,
Really, nigga?
he was like the
But
graphic
he's the
designer,
one who-
wasn't he? Yeah, I know who you mean.
Yes, he's the one who did at their behest, thinking they were genuine. He did the mock-ups.
She couldn't have chosen a less appropriate soulmate than Dodi Fayed, and nobody would have wished what happened to them to happen. And it wasn't entirely inevitable, but I think in a metaphorical sense, it was a car crash waiting to happen. And it was part of the overall tragedy. Wherever Fayed went, whatever he touched, it was a palsied hand which poisoned everything that it encountered.
Yes, exactly.
He was the man that tried to destroy your life. And it turns out, all of these months after his death, in fact, almost certainly, this guy, and I'm not going to say I've looked at the evidence, I haven't. But 60 women now accuse him of sexual impropriety. The reports are coming thick and fast. It turns out that there were multiple complaints made to both the police and actually the DPP, run by a certain Keir Starmer, who did not take action against Al Fayed. So, Neil, this must be, I imagine, one of mixed emotions for you, because here was the man who tried to destroy you, and he got away with this all, if indeed he was guilty.
God, please, no! 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 No!
Yeah. Well, of course, we suspected this all along. It's not only his sexual predations, but also the complete corruption by which he was surrounded in his private office, whereby if you fell out with him, then he would seek to destroy you by whatever means.
What?
Even senior Harrods executives like Peter Bolliger, who was the managing director of Harrods, or Christoph Betterman, the deputy chairman of Harrods, Graham Jones, who was the finance director of Harrods, Fayed imagined that they were responsible for various irregularities, which were completely unfounded. But he sought to destroy their lives as well, and many more like them. In the case of Graham Jones, who later went on to work for Qantas in Australia, he was the finance director of Harrods, and he undertook the valuation of a company called Modena Engineering, which was a Ferrari specialist, in which Nick Mason, the Pink Floyd musician, was a shareholder.
Wow.
And he thought that Graham Jones had overvalued the company because he'd taken bribes from somebody to sell it to Fayed at an overvalued rate. Absolutely groundless. And yet he got Graham Jones arrested on a plane as it was on the takeoff from Heathrow.
You could do so. You want.
And dragged off the plane, taken to Guildford police station under arrest and interrogated by the police. They eventually decided there was no evidence to justify any of this. All that was organised by his head of security, John McNamara, who's now dead. But he was responsible for making corrupt payments to the police, left, right and centre, to get them to do Fayed's bidding, even to the extent of getting people to be arrested on wholly bogus claims, and the many other examples which I've written about previously. And none of this was actually taken into account, in my case, to undermine the credibility of Fayed and his senior employees, who made allegations which brought my political career at Westminster to an end.
We do not care.
And yet in all this, his willing participants in his attempt to destroy him, of course, was the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian, which had previously condemned him for being a liar, purveyor of cock and bull stories, and a complete fraud, willingly took up the cudgels unquestioningly on his behalf to destroy Conservative ministers. I wasn't the only one who was targeted in the 1990s.
Okay.
But I was the only one who fought back And over many years, I even got the Bill of Rights of 1689 amended, the only person in history who's managed to do that.
So that was a lie.
In order that I could bring libel proceedings against Fayed about things which were alleged to have happened in Parliament. And it took me the best part of 10 years and cost an enormous amount of money at the end of it. And I didn't succeed in my attempt to protect my reputation through the courts.
Are you serious?
But of course, now that the reality of Fayed is being revealed in glorious Technicolor, it calls into question not just him, but also the people by whom he was surrounded, who took the Fayed shilling and who were responsible for supporting him in his predatory actions, both sexually and in the case of financial irregularities as well.
I don't like where this is going.
Most of them are now dead, but some are still alive, and some of them, in fact, still appearing on television. It'd be interesting to see what comments they've got to make about all this. The persons that I'm thinking of have been strangely silent, or in fact, unseen over the last few days. But,
Michael Cole, is that who you mean? He was his spokesperson.
Well, he's one, yes. He was Fayed's principal megaphone, actually.
And had been on GB News, commenting on various things, and since this has come out, he's disappeared. Neil, one thing that I keep thinking about is Princess Diana and Mohammed Al Fayed. Now, they were incredibly close, and it was Mohammed Al Fayed, of course, who introduced her to Dodi, which doomed her in the end for various reasons.
What do you mean by that?
Now, if this was so widely known in the 90s, why do you think Diana, who was someone who very much was on the side of the women and the abused in life, why was she so closely associated with Mohammed Al Fayed?
Good question.
Well, of course, she was a very damaged person, and one can understand why, given what happened in the course of her marriage. But I think Dodi was a very damaged person as well.
Are you sure about that?
And growing up as the son of Mohammed Al Fayed, you could well understand that too. Dodi was also a drug addict, and he'd been wrecked mentally, I think, because of that. He was never able to live up to his father's expectations.
Gay!
I mentioned this company, Modern Engineering. Fayed bought it as a kind of plaything for Dodi. The enterprise failed, of course. That's why the company went down, and that's why Fayed then accused his former finance director, who'd valued the company at the time of the purchase, of having overvalued it. Growing up in that environment made life very difficult. So I've got enormous sympathy for Diana. I do really, but she couldn't have chosen a less appropriate soulmate than Dodi Fayed.
Really, nigga?
And nobody would have wished what happened to them to happen, and it wasn't entirely inevitable. But I think, in a metaphorical sense, it was a car crash waiting to happen.
What do you mean by that?
It was part of the overall tragedy. Wherever Fayed went, whatever he touched, it was a palsied hand which poisoned everything that it encountered. And why he got away with it, why the establishment weren't interested enough to take him on, is a real mystery to me, because here is a man who saw himself as a modern Guy Fawkes, who tried to blow up modern parliamentary institutions, in effect, and to bring down a government on the basis of wholly bogus claims, so-called cash for questions, never actually happened.
What?
But he was a destructive force in every respect, because if he didn't get his way, he would seek to destroy you. And the reason why he sought to destroy me was because he'd been criticised in a government report, and when I was corporate affairs minister,
Good job.
Years later, I became responsible for this area of policy. He wanted me to reverse that report, which clearly I wasn't in a position to do, and I just washed my hands of the whole thing and let somebody else make that decision.
Come on now, dog.
And similarly in other respects, Fayed was thwarted. He couldn't get a British passport, so that and he couldn't get the European Court of Human Rights to do his bidding, and that was the point at which he turned his fire on the entire Conservative government led by John Major, and yet nobody ever took him on.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Here's a man, as I say, who tried to bring down, and to an extent succeeded in bringing down, the government of the day through the agency, not just of himself, but also his willing helpmates in the media, particularly the left-wing media. The Guardian were absolutely central to how he set about achieving his objectives. Boring. Another example of how the left's hypocrisy actually has done enormous damage to the institution of this country, and indeed to common decency, actually, because the left present themselves as paragons of good behavior and moral values. Actually, the grubby truth is usually the very opposite, as we're now seeing with Starmer, Lady Victoria Sponge.
You could do so. You want.
And all the dirt that's coming out about the financial improprieties that are going to engulf this current government. But a media which is really bent upon investigation in the cause of truth is vital to a free society. Fact. What we don't need is a media which poses as that, but does the opposite, actually covers up the truth and actually is part of the problem, not part of the solution.